Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to the Create and Invent podcast, and today we have somebody really special, somebody that I've known for a long time, Caleb Kraft, and actually Mr. Forbitz knows him too. So I think we're going to have a great conversation. So Caleb, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm doing well. How about yourselves?
Good, good.
Good.
And now Caleb, he was actually my editor at my first paid writing gig at Hackaday.com, and that was many years ago. And in fact, I've got my paycheck from them up on the wall. I think it was embarrassingly low now, looking back on it now, but it was awesome experience. And then, I wrote for him there. And then Caleb moved to Make Magazine, and I wrote for him there too. And I think there was something in the middle somewhere that we don't necessarily have to mention.
Oh yeah, E Times for a year.
Yeah, that's right. And then Mr. Forbitz, you've worked for Caleb as well in a writing position too, correct? Or have you not?
I dealt directly with Mike,
Okay.
and so
All right.
I wrote microcontroller reviews, and then somebody else is in charge of that now. Haven't been writing them so much recently, but yeah, I wrote for a little while.
Yeah. But Caleb
But I
did
ran
that.
into Caleb at Maker Faire Orlando. You've come to a few times, which has been great. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that there. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to ask, are you planning to go to Maker Faire Orlando this year, Caleb?
I don't think so. It's quite a trip for me. I'm based out of Missouri, and the only way I make it is if somebody else pays for it, basically. And since I'm not working for Make anymore, there's no reason for anybody to pay me to go there, and I just can't justify the expense out of pocket.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's always I don't know, making trips like that. I know Mr. Forbitz and I went to the Hackaday Super Conference several years ago, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. But it's expensive going from Florida to California, and likewise for you from Missouri to Florida. It's
Yeah, it adds up really quickly.
heads up.
Yeah.
So now, Caleb, I guess your background is IT, I believe. Before you were a writer, is that right? Or
Yeah. I was an IT administrator in manufacturing
okay,
when I started writing for Hackaday.
right? Yeah, it's interesting how that kind of works out. I worked in manufacturing too, and started writing for you, and then now that's kind of my career. So it's interesting how that kind of evolves after a while. But I mean, you were with Make for what? Quite a few
10
years. Yeah, I don't know. Was it 10 years? Was it 5?
It was 10 years
10,
at
okay.
Make. Yeah.
Okay, and then you're not with them anymore. So what have you been up to now that you're?
Well, I'm splitting my time between Able Gamers and the Controller Project, which is my design work for people with physical disabilities to help them play video games. And then I also help with Open Sauce, which is another event that is in a similar vein to Maker Faire and VidCon and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know a ton about open source. I know I've seen it come up once or twice, but is it? I mean, it's not like a fair. Like you can't go and display stuff there, or it's more like people talking, or is it? Oh, it is.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if you recall back in 2019, Maker Faire closed and collapsed in the Bay Area. It was a very emotional event because the Bay Area Maker Faire was incredible. And when it collapsed, William Osman, the internet guy, I don't know if you are familiar with him or watch him. He's a bit of a goofball.
Yeah.
But when it collapsed, he thought we can't let this go, and he wanted to do something that was similar, not exactly the same, but like his favorite parts of Maker Faire and his favorite parts of VidCon kind of mashed together. And that's how Open Sauce was born. It's really his baby, and it started that way. And I thought it was wonderful because Maker Faire was at the time dead. Now Maker Faire has come back to some degree, so I guess they're technically competing, but they don't feel the same to me, and like they don't feel like the same event to me, even though on paper it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same stuff.
So I mean, do people come and show? I mean, do they have like booths, or is it? Oh, so it's okay.
We had this last year we had 500 exhibitors. And then we had the stage that was absolutely packed with all the biggest YouTubers in the science area.
Oh, nice.
And we kind of break it down to our core belief, like our core goal is to get more people interested in science and engineering and make it cool and make it fun, you know?
Right.
And so that's kind of the basis that we work all of this off of. You know, it can be it can be kooky and silly, or it can be serious, as long as it's working towards that end goal.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
I guess it
I
just
saw.
seems. It seems. Go ahead.
No, I looked online. The list of YouTubers was pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild.
So, yeah, it would be fun to see some of those guys.
Yeah, for sure. And that's out of California, correct?
Yeah, that it's in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. So yeah, similar in many ways.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Does you think there might be a like open source New York or Florida or whatever
I don't
else in the
know.
future?
You know, a lot of people have suggested it because of the parallels, you know, between Maker Faire. People have suggested it, but right now it's so there's a very small team and they're still having to do everything so hands-on. Like if you're there, you see and you're interacting with William Osmond and these crews like trying to make this happen. I don't think they're to the point yet where they would expand like
Right,
that,
right.
but I mean it's not out of the question. It's not something I'm aware of in the plans though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's really neat. So, what's your favorite part about open source versus Maker Faire? What's like the if you were to
Yeah.
just just what's the distinction between the two? What's
Sure,
the
sure.
biggest?
You know, I think first of all, they're both wonderful, and I highly encourage you to go to both.
Right,
You know, Maker Faire is the original, but it's a different animal than it was. It's a lot smaller and it's a lot more low key and mellow than it used to be back in 2019, you know, 18. Um, I would say the big difference is energy. You go to open source and it's very high energy, very exciting, very large, very kind of bombastic. You're seeing celebrities, you're seeing wild, you know, crazy things, and it just feels very young and high energy, you know. Um, and I don't want that to seem like a disparaging or an insult to Maker Faire in any way,
right.
because Maker Faire is still absolutely wonderful and educational and fantastic. It's just kind of a different animal now than it was back then, and that's kind of what we're going for with open source to try to keep it a little different.
Sure. Yeah, that's good to keep some difference between the two. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny when we say that. I guess you're referring to the one in the Bay Area. I think
yeah.
about it. You said that I was like, oh well, yeah, I was at the last one in New York, but I guess that's not quite what you meant. I guess to you, I guess a lot of people, Maker Faire is the one in the Bay Area. Is
It was
that
a different, yeah. It was, you know, you go to I go to Maker Fairs all over the world, or at least I used to, and the one in the Bay Area was special in its scale and its spectacle. And
right?
now that that's just not around anymore, Open Source was trying to recreate that as well as incorporate the VidCon stuff to make it a kind of new animal because you know VidCon was very large and then was also taking a dive as well. So it's kind of a new animal with a science focus and a positive message that is combining the best of all of those worlds. Yeah.
It's nice. Well, what when you were doing Maker Fairs and stuff, okay, Bay Area, that's the big one. But like internationally, what was the coolest one? What was the coolest thing you saw when you had to travel overseas for it?
Oh boy. You know, it's interesting. People always ask like what was your favorite? What was the most interesting? And your perspective changes when you go to these maker fairs a lot because you start to see a lot of the same things or similar
Right.
things. You know, a lot of us think similarly and we kind of do similar projects and then a project gets big and goes open source and a lot of people recreate it and so the things that impress me aren't necessarily the things that I would put up on a pedestal to show the general public because there's a difference between what is interesting and newsworthy on the internet and what I find personally appealing because I've become a little numb to some of the other stuff. So a good example would be I think it was Maker Faire Xi'an in China. Um, you know, I'm walking around there, and of course, there's incredible robots and stuff, and those would be your headliners. That's what you'd put out on the internet. Like, look at this amazing robot. But what struck me and what stuck with me was this little dome tent that had this old gentleman in it with a little red LED and a little blue LED, and he's doing a shadow puppet show. And because the red LED and the blue LED are spaced side by side, the shadows are spaced out, and you wear 3D glasses and it's 3D. And this
That does
is,
sound pretty cool. I
yeah,
mean, that's
it was amazing. And since it was on the inside of this dome, you're like sitting back and this stuff is like coming at you and moving at you. And he's doing all these very simple effects. And this is the kind of thing it's simple. It's not hugely newsworthy. It wouldn't convey well in an article. I mean, maybe if I really put some flourish on the
yeah, yeah.
description, but in a pictures, it's not going to convey well because you're not getting that sense of it all. And it's almost just like a roadside gimmick. Um, but it made an impact because I had never seen it before, and it was
Yeah.
such an elegant use of such simple technology. You know what I mean?
No, that's awesome. And just to be clear, he was inside the tent. He was projecting from the tent, and you were outside of the tent, and you could
So
see.
we're inside of it with him, and
Oh,
he
okay.
is doing a shadow puppet show up on the inside of this dome tent.
Okay.
So he's got
So
a
this
little
is a pretty.
light, and he's putting his hands in front of it, and little cardboard props and stuff like that, and we can see him right in front of us. But then you look up at the shadows, and because of the offset of the red and blue LEDs that are casting the light, you get a red and blue separation that when you put on your 3D
Oh, that
glasses, you're seeing this in 3D.
that sounds like something fun you could do with like your kids or something.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
it was super
I,
low tech. You could do it with a couple batteries and a couple LEDs.
so
As
how
long as you
far
have
out were
the
the LEDs spaced? Like a couple inches, or
they were like this close apart, maybe.
so like an inch
Um,
apart, maybe?
yeah,
Or
maybe an inch.
okay.
Because the further away the shadow is, the more it's going to separate, right?
Hmm.
And that's of course giving you your 3D effect, right? So depending on how far he was from those LEDs, he could change the depth of different things in the shadow show, and it was
Yeah.
just really impressive. So I mean, I think that's a good example of the disparity between what's headline worthy and what I found personally really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that because it's, some things, as you said, they translate well to the internet. It's like, oh, this guy made this or that, but then if you're a little more, I don't know what to sound callous, a little more tech savvy, maybe a little more senior, you're like, okay, yeah, that's just, yeah, I understand what you did there, and it's you just put a, covering that, appeals to somebody who's watched the
Yeah, yeah,
latest Avengers movie or something. You know what
uh,
I mean?
yeah, for sure. I think the modern day equivalent is going to be, oh, they just put Chat GPT in it. So it's going to be like, oh, we have this new robot that can do anything. Oh, they just threw a Chat GPT agent in it. And the same old robot we've seen 50 times, right? So we're going to see that, I think, this year a lot, right? And it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's yeah. It all goes through phases, like you said. It seemed like, one year, thinking back years, it's like, one year it's like, oh, 3D printers were like the thing, and then it's like drones were like the thing for that Maker Faire, and then, who knows? Mr. Forbitz and I will probably go to the Orlando Maker Faire, so we gotta get our stuff figured out, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's a great Maker Faire too. That team always nailed it with all of their organization and promotion. And
Mm.
yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, no, they do a good job. It's interesting though. I don't. I guess I've been to one. I've been to very few Maker Fairs where I haven't been just like showing the whole time. So I don't. My perspective is probably a little bit different than most people's. So
I'm actually looking forward to that this year. I am not going to be selling kits, so I'm going to make an effort to see everything.
really,
Yeah.
now, Mr. Forbitz, he says he sells kits, but really, it's like he sits there in the booth and people just throw money at him. So I don't know. You know,
They
So
they
it's
sold very well the first 2 years, not so much the third year, but Yeah.
Remind
okay.
me again. You had the wooden puzzles, right?
No, I was right next to them.
Right next to them.
I
Okay.
have the little Simon game solder kit,
Oh, that's right.
and
Okay.
the
Okay.
ghost detector was very popular. Um, Metal detector less so. Yeah, Valentine message heart with a little LED display for messages, that kind of stuff.
so what do you think? What do you think your stuff sold so well the first 2 years, but is kind of petered off? What's your
Uh,
thought on that?
because I haven't made new products. As long as I had new products to bring, they would sell. But now, the third year, I was seeing the same people, because I like know them now. They would come to my booth and they'd be like, "Oh, what do you have new for this year?" And I'm like, "Didn't get around to designing anything." So I need to go back to the drawing board, start designing more products.
That's interesting. I guess I see this and I'm like, okay, it's different people every year, but I guess it's not. I guess the same people.
I see a lot of the same people. I'll be like, "Oh, here's that guy with his 5 kids who doesn't buy anything, but the 5 kids have a lot of fun at my booth, so that's okay." But it's yeah, no, I mean, I have people say, I was here last year, the year before. What have you got that's new? And so I promised myself I would have like 3 new products by this November, and it hasn't happened. So
You still got two months.
life
That's
gets
actually
in
a
the
very
way.
common problem. I think in the maker community, in all the maker fairs, it's kind of a problem that it's very difficult to get new people into the mix. When you look at the advertising for a maker fair, if you're unfamiliar with a maker fair, it kind of lacks a huge draw for you. And once you're familiar, you look at it and you go, "I'm in,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But if you're unfamiliar, it's kind of hard to decode what even it is.
yeah,
And it's a little easier if you can bring in, big famous YouTubers or a band or some sort of draw that has overlap.
yeah,
That makes sense.
But it can be really difficult to get new blood
yeah.
in the community for these events. It's a struggle I've seen all over the world, where you have kind of the same people coming every year, and you might have like a 10% new people or something, and it's really hard to just to reach them and get them interested in finding out what it's about. Now, converting them is easy. Once somebody shows up, if they're interested in DIY, electronics, or anything that's even vaguely touched on in a maker fair,
Yeah.
they're hooked. But
Yeah.
the hard part is trying to get new people interested.
Yeah. I wonder about that from like if you've gone to a maker fair, you get the same one next year. There's a pretty good chance I'm showing the same stuff I showed last year. So I mean, I've got a new idea for this year. So stay tuned, I guess. But I've had the same stuff like many years following. So it's like maybe people want to take a year off or two. I don't know.
Well, you see, I've got something to demonstrate. So I'll get a table right next to THS. I built an oobleck bouncer. So I'm going to have some, purple colored oobleck bouncing away, and I'll let the kids turn the frequency and amplitude knobs and stuff like that.
All right. So for those that are don't know, what is oobleck?
Oobleck is a non-Newtonian fluid made from cornstarch and water. So it is liquid most of the time, but when it experiences an impact, it turns into a solid.
Ah, okay. I remember. I remember my freshman engineering class. Some people from the ceramics engineering class tried to come in, and that was their propaganda, something like that.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Because it's cool, because you take a bin of it, and you're like, watch, it sloshes back and forth. And then you say to the person, now try punching it. And when you try and punch it, it's solid. Your fist doesn't go in. And it's really, really weird to experience that. But if you take a little bit of this and you stick it on a subwoofer and you just send a square wave at the subwoofer, then it's, when the subwoofer's not moving, it turns into a liquid. But then it starts bouncing around like a ball of glue. It looks like flubber.
oh,
And
that
so,
does sound pretty awesome.
yeah.
It makes
Actually-
fires. They look like fingers that will come up out of it whenever you get the speaker going. It's wild looking.
It is
Really?
pretty wild, and it tries to escape too. It totally tries to get off the speaker, which has happened to me a few times. So, I don't know. It should be exciting. I could just stand at the table and demo that all day. I'll try to have other things, but that's not a product I can sell, right? So I would never have had that on my selling table. So it's nice to be able to. I mean, I could draw people in with it, but I need space for the product, right?
Right.
It could be a product though. A little actuator and a cylinder, like clear perspex, cylinder, and a
Yeah.
little packet explaining how to make oobleck out of cornstarch. A little
Oh,
driver.
that's true. Or you could
Yeah.
call it like, you know, and you could say, oh, it's the Mexican jumping beans that never die. I don't know. You guys ever
I
got?
had those, yeah, as a little
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because I remember we got them one time. I think we found them in a gas station or something, and like, oh, that's so cool. But like a couple days later, they're not doing anything.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like a bug larva in there or something. What a
I
horrible
think
way
so.
to die.
I think so. It seemed more interesting when I was like 8 or
Yeah.
whenever I had.
When you're not thinking about the the creature in there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
As a kid,
I
Now,
thought
I-
that would be. Man.
I think a little oobleck bouncer kit would actually sell really well. I mean, it draws in the crowd, right? And I
It
think
might.
being able to
The amplifier's a little bit of work, though. I mean, you got to throw a lot of power to get this thing jumping. So I don't know.
Or you put a supercapacitor in there, and then you just like.
Well,
Man.
there actually are two pretty big capacitors in there.
Of course, that's not like that safe either. I guess if it gets taken apart, and then,
No, I mean, there's AC in there. So inside the box, I made a wooden box for it. So
I'm saying if you sold it as a product,
Yeah.
some kid takes it apart, and
yeah.
it's not.
I don't know. I'll think about it. There's probably is a way to make a product out of it, but I'm just not doing that this year.
It's a little short notice, isn't it?
It is a
in
little
2
short
months?
notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also have to make our Power Wheel racer so that our team can race this year. We're making little bits of progress on it, but
Yeah,
That's a
it's going
big
to be a Spider-Man car or something. Is that right?
Spider-Man themed car this year. Yeah. It's we really tore the old car apart though, so we got some welding to do. And
Yeah.
just when you're like, okay, I know the next thing we need to do, it'll take 20 minutes. You discover that a screw broke and you can't actually remove that thing, and now it takes hours. And so we've run into that a couple of times. So
That's
yeah,
what happens.
yeah,
you know, I haven't really participated in this build that much, Paul. But it's. I keep thinking, man, I would love to drive. I would love to be the driver for something like this, but I feel like neither
you're
you,
too big, dude.
neither
You're
me
way
nor,
too
nor
big.
you, and we're all pretty big guys, and
Yeah.
I'm probably the biggest, so I'm not gonna. It's not gonna happen for me, unfortunately.
I could
Me
barely
neither.
fit in this car, barely. But really, somebody smaller than me will have a much easier time driving.
Yeah. But we got some smaller people at Tampa Hackerspace.
We
so,
do.
hopefully they'll participate. I guess. Mm-hmm. Have you ever? So you've never driven one of these, Caleb? Have you?
Just around in a parking lot. I've never done it in a race.
Okay. Yeah, I've never even done that. I'd be afraid of breaking it, to be honest. 'Cause,
And the one I did was so long ago. I was using like a starter for the motor.
Oh wow!
I mean, it was pretty rough. I mean, it had to have been like 2015 or something. I mean, it was a while back.
Yeah, the guy next to us was using an angle grinder as his motor, which was pretty impressive. But yeah, one of our drivers last year, a guy who actually wasn't supposed to drive, he's just like, that looks like too much fun. I want to drive in the next race. He rolled the car onto its side, ended up spraining his wrist. So it is not without risks.
who's this, Carl or Ben?
No, that was Ed.
Oh, Ed. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Ed also
Yeah,
apparently forgot to strap the battery in, and so it fell out the back of the car. So
Okay.
no,
well, at least
not,
you don't have to
not
drive
good.
it home.
Well, I mean, keep in mind this battery. It's a 48-volt battery. Big lithium pack with a ridiculous amount of energy in it. So,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you don't have to, like, if you break your car, you can still get it home because you've got a trailer or something. It's not meant to be,
yeah.
it's not your transportation, hopefully. That'd be,
Oh, no.
That'd be interesting.
No. Goodness gracious.
Uh,
Oh.
yeah. Yeah, actually, I replaced, so I was showing Mr. Forbits. Actually, I wasn't showing him earlier. I just happened to notice when I got on looked at it on the screen. I replaced my alternator to my car Sunday, and I got this huge bruise on my arm now. So somehow it got there. So,
No fun.
Oh, you just wanted to flex on camera.
well, I actually, well, I mean, look, it's you can barely see it, but it's definitely
Yeah.
like a huge. Because my
Yeah,
wife's like, "Oh, did you burn yourself?" I'm like, "I don't think so," but now I see it's a big bruise.
pretty sizable.
Yeah, but now Caleb, you did a lot of stuff with Volkswagen uh, buses for a while.
Volkswagen
Is that
buses. Yeah.
still a thing for you, or is that
No, I ended up getting priced out of it. The value of the buses started going up. When I first started playing with buses, I mean, I grew up as a little kid with Volkswagen buses, and when I first started like buying them and fixing them, you could get a bus for $1,000 and the motor for another, $1,000 or something, or $500, and slap it together and be driving, right?
nice?
And now, a rusty hunk of junk with no motor, no transmission. The frame is just rusted. The floors are gone. You're looking at like $5,000 to start, right?
Wow.
By the time you've got a driving vehicle, you're in 15, 20 grand. And I don't have the financial flexibility to do something like that, right? As a hobby.
Mm.
So I'm not. I did try old American vans. I'm obsessed with vans. We don't need
Yeah,
to
it's
even
fine.
get into it. But I did try old American vans, like a mid 60s Dodge, and they're beautiful and they're cheap, back like Volkswagens used to be. And I'd love to do another one of those. You get them broken, you get it back on the road, you get it driving, and then you sell it when you're sick of it. But I don't even have the financial flexibility to do that anymore.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I got kids in college and I got land now that I have to, deal with tractor implements, and I don't have the money for those toys, but I'd love to. I'd love to work
Mm.
on old
you.
vans.
It's always you probably don't have the time either. I don't know. That's like my. I mean, not that the finances aren't a problem, but it seems like the time is as
Yeah.
much of a problem, if not more,
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got an old Airstream I'm working on fixing up so I can sell, and just doing something simple like painting, that would be like a 1 day job or a 2 day job. It takes me weeks because, I'm juggling multiple jobs and having to, again, deal with all this land I have,
Yeah.
mowing and clearing brush and stuff. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, to be clear, you don't have a. I mean, I contract for several. And are you working? Do you consider yourself working for yourself right now, or you consider yourself employed for a
I am
company? Or
employed.
okay,
Um, Technically, I'm employed equally between Able Gamers and Open Source.
oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Now, is Able Gamers, is that with Microsoft? Is that correct, or for some
No,
reason?
Able Gamers is an independent charity. They've been around for, oh goodness, at least 10 years now.
Okay.
And
Well, tell you what. I think usually till we take like a coffee break, in the middle to break things up. I think maybe we'll take our coffee break, and after that we'll let you get into that.
yeah,
Quite a bit. Does that sounds like a
sounds
good
good.
place to break it up? All right, sounds good. Well, we'll be back. Hey, Jeremy Cook here, and welcome to the Coffee Break. Today I'd like to give a shout out to our top 5 patrons. First of all, Timothy Moran, Carl, Michael Sizer, Brian Moses, Pat Regan, and Positive Waves. I think that's 6, but thank you so much for supporting us. Of course, you can contribute monetarily at patreon.com/createinvent. Also, if you want to leave a comment on wherever you're watching this, or leave a like, whatever, or if you want to email me at hi@jeremyscook.com, let me know how I'm doing, or how we're doing as a podcast. That'd be awesome. Anywhere you can give us some sort of like, comment, subscribe, whatever, we would very much appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll get you back to your show. You want to take us back, Paul, and then we'll get into it?
Sure. You usually do that, but okay.
I mean, I could do that if you want me to. I didn't want to.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Caleb Kraft, and we're about to talk about Able Gamers. What can you tell us about that, Caleb?
Able Gamers is a charity that helps people with physical disabilities be able to play video games. Gaming has grown from just like this little kind of dinky thing back in the old Atari days that geeks would do to one of the biggest industries in the world now, right? And it's become a prominent way of people to interact. And with a lot of physical disabilities comes social isolation in a number of ways. Either you're physically incapable of interacting with people, or people treat you differently because you're in a wheelchair, or look differently, or move differently. And online gaming provides a social outlet that they're often locked out of because they can't use the controllers. So Able Gamers focuses on different ways of including everybody in gaming. They do training for development studios on how they can better aid people in gaming from the software side. They work with hospitals that have lots of clientele that have been injured or sick or whatever, getting physical therapy. They work with them to get the right gaming components to people. And since they picked me up, now we also work with the general public for people who don't even necessarily consider themselves disabled. So like somebody who has really bad arthritis or lost a finger in an accident. These people aren't saying, I have a disability. They're not going into a hospital to talk to occupational therapists, but they also can't they can't push the buttons on a controller.
Yeah.
So the stuff that I help Able Gamers with is designing and distributing parts to help people play that have like different physical attributes, right? Like some missing fingers, missing limbs, inability to control muscles in certain ways. Mostly it's just 3D printed stuff for controllers.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be a like example of that? What's
Well, I can show you my latest design that's probably going to be one of the most commonly used designs. I don't have a super fantastic example of it, but a lot of the times people have problems with these thumbsticks.
Okay.
They can't reach them, or what we see extremely common is people with spinal injuries who are quadriplegic or paralyzed. A lot of people don't know that doesn't mean they have no movement. That usually means they're missing fine movement. So they can do things like move their arm, but they can't do this. Well, if you can move your arm,
so they can't like move their fingers or like rotate or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Just for people that are listening.
Oh yeah, I forget.
Yeah,
Podcasts
that's
are
all right.
audio, right? So you could move your arm at the shoulder, but you couldn't wiggle your thumbs to use a thumbstick. So
Right.
like this setup is a thing that clamps onto the thumbstick that allows you to put different attachments on the top of it. So we have these things called goalposts. Here's a goalpost, which is an attachment that goes on that thumbstick that lets you just set your arm on it, and it holds your arm properly on the thumbstick, and you can move it around.
That's
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And variations of that same concept help a lot of people. So if you're missing like your pointer finger and your middle finger, you can't hit the shoulder buttons, right? So maybe we would design a rig that clamps onto the controller that moves those shoulder buttons over to different fingers. And then we distribute these for free. People who need them all over the world, we distribute them completely for free. Either I print them or I have a volunteer print them in another country and give them to people for free.
What's interesting is, I'm somewhat familiar with what you do, and but for me though, I didn't realize as far as the 3D printing, but I guess I didn't realize that Able Gamers also works with the software side of things, just to make sure that something can. I mean, what is that? You can maybe flip the. I don't know. I guess I always. I mean, it's not the same thing, but I think about like, was it GoldenEye? I always played it. I always had to play it reverse.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So it is.
That's
it
not a
is very
disability.
similar
It's just the
stuff
way
to
I
that.
think. But
Yeah, they did a bunch of studies. They have a whole breakdown, like a scientific breakdown of like the most common things you can do while you're developing your game to help people. Not to get too deep into it, but like a lot of it is simple stuff that if you do it during the process does not add to the development cost because it is pretty simple stuff. It adds to the cost if you wait till the very end and then try to tack it on, right? So little things like, let's say you are looking at multiple characters on the screen and one of them is talking to you. To add a little visual highlight that person like lights up
Oh, yeah.
when they're talking to you, is a good example of like a way of snapping somebody's attention to know that person is talking. And then subtitles, right? Like subtitles,
Right.
of course, can help people with auditory issues. These sound like very obvious things you see in a whole lot of games now, but those are actually accessibility aids. And like the studies have shown that, I don't remember if it was Netflix or if it was Ubisoft. Somebody did a study on subtitles that if they turn them on by default, something like don't quote me on the number because this is probably wrong, but something like 85% of people left subtitles on. So it's helping more people than what you think of as just like the people with a disability. More
Right.
people use these things. It makes the experience better for people.
Yeah.
And there's a long list of software things that can be done to improve your game, increase the amount of people that can play the game under the guise of accessibility.
Right. That's interesting. It's, we think about this as, accessibility, but at the same time, you think about, well, if you're making something easier, perhaps, there's so many people that can benefit from that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you find yourself, because you highlighted some of sort of the adapting of the controllers already available, do you find yourself designing things from scratch, like USB foot pedal interfaces or anything like that?
That's how I started
Okay.
back in 2011 at Hackaday.
Okay.
And I would design stuff from scratch, or I would rip controllers open and completely rebuild them separate, in different
Yeah.
ways. But there are some huge downfalls to that. The
Yeah.
longevity is nowhere near as good as a standard controller. I don't have the budget and time to design something that's going to stand up to the abuse of gaming like Microsoft did. They put millions and millions of dollars into both the ergonomics and the ability to withstand torture, right? That I
Right,
don't have, right?
Right.
Right.
And the fact is, a lot of these interfaces that we build from scratch, to put it bluntly, just aren't as good. It's often it's our ego. At least for me, it was my ego saying I had to build something from scratch
Yeah.
because then I built it.
Yeah.
And once I gave up on that, I was able to make better solutions that utilized the standard controller that has millions of dollars of development and research and experience and iteration into, right? Like decades of iteration now, right? The Xbox is 20 years old, something like that.
So
But
That's not right.
Yeah, no,
But,
it is. It is.
they've got all that design time and investment in it. Why recreate that when what we can do is just alter it slightly with a few cents of plastic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That really can change the game. And I have to give a special shout out here. I held a contest and a guy named Akaki Kumari, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I apologize if it's wrong. Akaki Kumari developed a full one-handed kit and kind of really opened our eyes to the complexity we could create and the modifications we could create without having to alter the controller itself. And ever since then, like really, it's like there's really no problem we can't solve with creating a mechanical structure around the controller. It's just a matter of being able to devote the time to design.
Well, wow.
That's something.
But you get to do that for basically half of your employment at this point. So you do have pretty decent amount of time to dedicate to it, even though it's
Yeah.
probably
So
not enough.
I get to design stuff all the time now, which I love. It's a little hard sometimes to stick to the things that are known that are going to help someone, and not jump to the things that just pique my interest. I want to go design these other things that are really interesting, but the fact is, like thumbstick extensions are the most common request, right?
Yeah.
So we've been iterating and designing on different ways to do that works. And there's, it's really hitting home the power of iteration over time, because you can think you have the greatest design, but you give it to people and let them use it for a couple of years, and you start to realize, like, well, there's shortcomings in the material properties, shortcomings in this aspect of the design when it actually hits the road. The ergonomics might not be right? So you have all this
Right.
time to rethink it and redo things, and that's kind of the flexibility that Able Gamers has given me, right? Is that I have now this time that I can devote to, like, going back and redesigning things or tackling complex problems.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, do you have, you hit on something that kind of, I don't know, maybe resonated with me. I just think about, like, sometimes, I'll start a project, and this is a problem for all of us, I'm sure. And then I'll be like, oh, there's a better project over here. And I'll start on that, and I won't get that done. And sometimes I think, I almost need a boss to tell me what to do. Do you have somebody keeping you on track with this? Because
No.
I feel like that would be useful sometimes.
Yeah. No, I don't have somebody keeping me on track. Luckily, I'm pretty good at separating work and play, right? So for my play, I have a lot of projects, and they're all three-quarters done.
Yeah.
I'm working on the Airstream. I've got a tractor I'm working on. I've got a industrial mower I'm working on. I've got silkscreen T-shirts I've just started playing with. I still do hand engraving, right? So those are all my personal projects, and they can come and go. I can get sick of them and put them down for years, whatever. But work, the design for accessible gaming, I've been able to kind of mentally put in that category of work now.
Okay.
And I can sit down and devote the time to, like, completing this project.
Right.
Now, I still really struggle with, once I've got the minimum viable product, once I've solved the problem, right? You get your prototype that solves the problem, and you're like, this did it. This solved the problem. Ideally, you still go 2 or 3 steps further. Now, I struggle. I stop there and I move to the next one. That's a personal struggle, right? Like, I kind of, like, I designed, like this box. For those listening, it's about, I don't know, 7 or 8 inches wide, and it's a box with multiple arcade buttons that you can move around modularly, right? To be able to place them in different ways to be able to game. This is an accessible controller that is going to help people that game with one hand or whatever. You can put a thumbstick in this.
Oh, very
There's
cool.
a whole list of things that could be improved about this. But the fact is with my ADHD brain, once I designed it and once it's technically functional, I completely lost interest and had to move on to another problem that needed solved. I should go back to that and improve it and fix all the little things, the little issues. But it's really hard when it's like, well, it works, and I've
Yeah.
got this new problem in my brain that I want to tackle, right?
Yeah. So, like, for your personal projects, you get everything three-quarters done, whatever. What's your philosophy on that? Do you feel like you failed, or you feel like you've learned something new, or you feel like, I don't know. I always wonder how to think about that myself.
I used to struggle a lot with the weight of unfinished projects on my shoulders, and I still do sometimes. And I love a good purge where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. And you just get rid of all the stuff. Or kill a project and just officially it's dead. It's not happening anymore. I like to launch websites, like many of us from that era of when the internet was starting. We buy
Yep.
domain names and we're like, well, I'm going to do this website. I like to launch websites, and I got to tell you, I love killing them too. If I stopped updating it a year ago,
Yeah.
there's something that just feels so good about going and logging into that back end and deleting the whole directory and just being like, it's done. It's gone. I'm not going to update it. I know I'm not going to update it. It's just gone. It's no longer on my list. So I guess my advice is learn to find the enjoyment not only in doing your projects, but also declaring a project done, even if it's not finished.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's healthy. It's I know. I mean, I guess to defend that a little bit more. Sometimes, I saw a project I was actually writing up for a publication a while ago, and the guy talked about, it's like, well, I made this routine for a walking. It wasn't a strand piece, but it was something similar to that. And, I made a routine for optimizing walking just for fun in 2006. Well, fast forward to today, and he made some sort of walking table based on that. And he also used a controller that he designed in, I think, 2020. And, it's I don't know, sometimes unfinished projects, even if you don't finish them, they can lead to you finishing something else, I guess, that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, for me, most of my projects are me learning a new skill. And once I've learned the skill, I kind of lose a little bit of interest. And over the years, I've talked to enough people to know that there are tons of us that's really how it works, right? You get that dopamine rush of going from horrible at it to being okay at it, and then you kind of lose interest when the learning curve mellows out, and you got to put in a whole lot of work to get better.
Yeah.
So
no, I get that, but it's I think about from like a monetary perspective. If you just keep learning stuff pretty well, then you never really get paid for that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, or maybe you do. You become me and Caleb and Mr. Forbits getting paid to write about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I think about this when I think about what we're talking about. It goes right back to high school where, like generations before us, you could be trained to do one thing and then make a career out of that forever. And I was told in high school, your work life's not going to be like that. You're going to work for 10 companies in your career. You're going to have to constantly improve your skills. Like just looking at computer programming, there were people that were trained to program one system, right? Like an IBM System 360 system. And it was expected they were going to be able to make a career out of one programming language for one system. It's not like that anymore. You have to continue to learn. Some of us love that, but I guess kind of get addicted to it because I feel the same way, I mean, like, what's the next step for me in electronics? Going back to grad school and getting a degree in it? I mean, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not interested in being an electronics engineer. Yeah, it's time to go on to machining or woodworking or something, So,
but I mean, for a little background on Mr. Forbits, though, you do have a undergrad in physics, right?
Undergrad is mathematics.
Mathematics and a graduate degree in physics.
So computer programming, actually.
Okay, computer programming.
Science.
But you almost got a degree in physics too, correct?
I took honors physics. I never really took physics that seriously, but I've taught physics.
So getting the degree in electrical, you're getting some.
Oh yeah,
you're pretty close. You understand the language being calculus and
what I remember of E&M class and all the mathematics background I have. Yes, there is nothing technical in electronics that quite intimidates me, but I don't see getting so into transistor design that I want to build a career around that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
it'd be fun to learn something else.
It's always fun to learn, but yeah,
it is always fun to learn.
But yeah, no, like you said, Caleb, it seems like maybe you get too into learning and less about doing sometimes, I guess. I don't know, but who's to say what's right or wrong, I guess. I don't know.
I like it. I mean, I feel like it, at least for me, it's a healthy pursuit. Other people do it too, but it would be like getting really into a reality show or a TV show. You're doing that same process. You're accruing knowledge, but it's about this story, this fantasy story or whatever. You're accruing knowledge. You're building a mental map. You're doing all of the same stuff that we do whenever we go out into the garage and we learn a new skill, right? It's just pointed in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is unhealthy, maybe, how we've looked at it for so long as like, if you're out in the garage learning a new skill, it has to be in the service of changing your life or changing your career, right? Where it really doesn't. It can literally be the same thing as watching a TV show. Mm. You can go out into your garage and learn how to do lace work to make medieval lace designs that are gorgeous with no intent of ever doing anything with it other than sitting back and going, that was really fun, and now I know that. Which is literally the same thing you get at the season finale of a TV show, right?
No, that's a great point though. It's what are you doing with your time and what oh, is it better to watch TV for 2 hours or make something cool for yourself? Obviously,
I've stopped watching TV.
I do both. And I think it's healthy to to realize that a lot of these things are just occupying your brain and amusing yourself, right? It's just a different way of doing it, I guess. And we, for some reason, we assign a weight to things that doesn't necessarily have to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, yeah, that being said, sometimes at the end of the shows, we like to kind of ask people what they're working on. So I think, why don't we, what are you working on these days, Caleb? What's your latest project?
So I just designed this system. I didn't demonstrate it because, again, this is a podcast. We're not going to do super visual. But I just designed this system for new thumbstick extensions, which doesn't sound exciting, but it is, because the way this clamp works that holds onto the thumbstick, there's really nothing like it out there right now available.
And that's on an Xbox controller, correct?
Yes, that's on an Xbox controller. It works on PlayStation 2, PlayStation as well. And it's a 3D printed clamp that goes onto the thumbstick that holds on really well, doesn't obstruct the movement. This sounds like such a simple thing. As I'm describing it, it sounds like such a simple thing. But it's actually really difficult because it's got to be a minimum amount of material so it doesn't bump into things, but it still needs to hold on with great force and leverage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's got like threads, which only recently have 3D printers really been reliable enough and easy enough to be able to incorporate like nice threads in your design for screwing things together consistently. So I'm working on a bunch of different toppers for that now, right? Or the next project I think I'll tackle is just a simple footrest to hold a controller so you can do stuff with your toes. And depending on how crazy I get with it, it could be really simple, or it could be like something with multiple degrees of adjustment and whatever. But, that's where my mind is at. And luckily, I've got able gamers there to let me spend the time to do it.
That's awesome, really. The ability to clamp to that thing, I can see that being a serious challenge. I was wondering, did those unscrew and you were screwing into the controller? But no, just clamping onto the controller itself. Pretty amazing.
So I know this is again, this is a podcast. It's not visual.
Well,
but
okay.
if I can demonstrate this thing, it actually is 3 pieces
Oh, wow.
that come apart and clamp around it that have threads integrated into it for screwing together. I don't know. It's a podcast. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's a complex system that's only been in the past couple of years really feasible with most printers at home.
But I mean, basically, it looks like it goes around the thing and then it screws in to tighten it down. That's very clever. If I'm getting that correctly, that's a very clever way to do that. So yeah, I can see how that would work very well. But obviously, it took some thought to get to that point.
Not just thought, but time. Like 3D printers in the past 3-4 years have just gone insane with the quality you get out of the box and the reliability you get out of the box now.
What's your printer of choice these days? Can you say?
You know what? These are the two factions that hate each other, but I think it's just such a good mix. I have Bamboo and Prusa.
Okay.
I have a Bamboo A1 that I use all the time, and I have a Prusa MK4 and a Prusa XL with 5 heads that I use all the time. I have to say I find the Prusas more reliable. I get a lot of people with these printers don't actually work with extremely tight tolerances. They're working with very loose tolerances. I work sometimes with very, very tight tolerances. And I find that the Prusas give me workable parts within spec more consistently than any of the other printers out there, with Bamboo being very close behind. I've tried, a lot of people say get an Ender. They're cheap, and try it. And you may be able to get your Ender set up and working and get a part that looks okay, but it'll be way out of spec. They'll have horrible elephant foot. You're going to be fighting bed adhesion. And, that's great if you want to learn all the ins and outs of how to build a printer and how to upgrade a printer and how to fix a printer. But if you just want like solid killer parts right out of the box, high quality, like 90% success rate out of the box, get a Bamboo because they're dirt cheap and they're just freaking great quality. If you
Awesome.
want like supreme quality all the time consistently and an upgrade path where you maybe don't need a new printer next year or the year after, you can just buy the few parts and upgrade it, get a Prusa.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, you
Interesting.
look at the upgrade path. I think the Prusa Mark III came out in 2014 or 15, and people are still
Wow.
upgrading those
Hmm.
to modern standards of high quality, just buying kits off
Okay.
of Prusa to upgrade them.
I've got an Ender myself, and it's a workhorse, but it took some you
It
know
took some work.
it took some work. It both works a lot for me and took a little bit of work from me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but no, I've been happy with that, but it's not perfect either. So you know,
When they came out, it was a great step, right? Because they were so cheap and so easily modified and fixed. But it's a different world now. When you're at a direct price comparison between an Ender 3 and a Bamboo A1 or A1 Mini, and you can do multicolor on an A1 or A1 Mini, at a direct price comparison, it's not even the same world. You pull it out of the
yeah.
box and you're getting just fantastic prints.
Well, I mean, the bamboos look awesome, but I mean, do you find any problems with it not being open source and having to what? Don't you have to like use their servers or something like that? Is there
I mean, it's
have you seen it?
realistically okay. So this is a an ethical dilemma, right? It's not a physical dilemma. Nobody's having problems with their printer not being open source. Like nobody puts their printer on the shelf, hits print, and goes, "Ow! It's not open source. That hurts. My part didn't come out right." It doesn't happen, right? It's an ethical dilemma. Do you want to support open source or not, right? Um, I I think open source is fantastic. I think it's great. And I think that more people should buy Prusa printers because they are really champions in open source. Not only, that upgrade path I mentioned earlier is important, but that comes out of the fact that they publish everything open source to an extreme degree. Like you can get every part. You can just build a knockoff Prusa printer by ordering your own parts based off of their price lists, their part lists, and everything, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think that if you really value open source, you should support Prusa. However, there's no denying that the Bamboo machines are a great user experience. They're cheap. You pull it out of the box, it prints. You don't have to use their servers. You can do literally
Okay.
the same thing you do with your Prusa, where you put it on a memory stick and walk over and put it in the machine. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. I don't even use the Wi-Fi for my Prusa machines.
Hmm.
Now, are there security concerns with a company wanting access to your Wi-Fi network? Sure, sure. But before you throw a fit about that, you should probably evaluate what you're carrying around in your pocket every day.
Yeah, that's
Before you
true.
start drawing a line in the sand saying, I don't want this 3D printer company to know that I'm slicing a file, you should probably, look at the what your
Yeah.
apps are recording about your location and what you're doing on your phone. Personally, I don't trouble myself with it that much, but I get the concern. I do get
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
concern.
No, it's what is it? It's something about how the programmer keeps the computer logged up. How the engineers keep the computers locked up with a gun next to it or something
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or a hammer or whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
But other people aren't so concerned. But
yeah.
I don't know. I
I
feel
mean,
like
I,
there's
I
some
really
sort of
do
like
think it is an ethical dilemma because the 3D printing community was built on open source, right? It wouldn't exist if it weren't for the community being open source. But it is, again, really hard to deny that they're just great products.
right, right. No, that's a good point. Well, Mr. Paul, you got anything you want to tell us about that you've been working on? Anything awesome?
Well, I mean, if I get the Power Wheel Racer done, I'm going to work on the fax machine, FACTS, the vending machine for fax. where you can buy penny facts or nickel facts or quarter facts, and the quality
Okay.
of fact that comes out depends on how much you spend.
Oh,
Oh,
is that
that's
for Maker Faire?
wonderful.
That's,
How is it physically represented?
so I want it to spit out little cards that have the fact printed on it. So you can take it away. It'll look like a little tabletop vending machine. Not very big, but it was an idea I came up with my kids. So we're gonna have silly facts for a penny and more serious facts for a quarter. You know.
Oh, I
Oh
was
my
thinking maybe they
goodness.
wouldn't even be accurate for a penny. Maybe just like
Oh no, they're all gonna be facts. They're all gonna be
frogs look-
facts.
for 1 cent you can learn that frogs live on the moon since
No, no, like one
1853.
1 cent you can find out the state bird of Alabama, but for a quarter maybe you'll get Maxwell's equations or something. You know.
Oh, this is fantastic. I love this concept.
Yeah.
And the wordplay with the name is so great. You should apply to demonstrate that at Open Source.
Oh really? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
if I get it built, maybe next year.
Yeah. When does open source happen?
It's early summer, so June.
So you got time, Paul.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know if I have time by November to get it done for Maker Faire Orlando, but we'll see.
I
Well,
love
you
this
gotta
idea. Facts
you gotta
machine.
pay to sell, right? If you're gonna be collecting quarters.
No, I think we'll just take those as donations for the Tampa Hackerspace.
Okay. All right. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
I don't really want to make any money off of these facts. I don't think it's possible at a quarter a fact. But who knows?
Yeah, who
Yeah, I
has
mean-
change in their pockets anymore? You might need a
Nobody.
bucket of change next to it just so it can even be demonstrated.
Yes, I will definitely need a bucket of change next to it. You're absolutely
You
correct.
could have a QR code for Venmo.
25-cent Venmo transaction.
25. Yeah. Boy, that sounds great. What
One-
fees do
Yeah.
I pay on that?
Venmo's gonna love it.
Yeah.
Well,
anyways. So what's your project, Jeremy?
oh, my projects. Well, I was working on. I wish I had it to demonstrate. I showed it off at Tampa Hackerspace last night, but it's I made a little MIDI controller. It's like maybe like 2 inches cubed that you can play 6 notes on it and it puts out a little beat. So anyway, I should hopefully have video up on at Cooked Audio at some point. So that should be a pretty fun one.
Nice.
I tried to make the world's smallest, which was 1 inch cubed, and it did work, but it just wasn't that playable. So I made something tiny bit bigger and a lot more functional. So
Nice.
Cool.
yeah. Well, Caleb, thanks so much for joining us. Paul, as always, great talking to you.
Nice conversation.
Yeah, and Caleb, we won't see you at Orlando this year, but hopefully we'll see you around somewhere.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss it. Orlando's such a cool one, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy and good luck.
All right.
Alrighty, thank you.
All right. Bye.
So I'll go ahead and stop the recording.